But as the day when the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.
And this is As the World Burns. Do you want to go over Polybius today?
I was actually thinking we should like have a conversation about the mothership approaching and like your take and my take and just like us treating it like we're like it's happening, guys.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm not entirely sure if it's happening, but
that's good. Like whatever it is, like we're just gonna have a real candid talk about it. I'm gonna push the envelope and we'll have a like it'll be a lot of gold in there.
All right, that's cool, but let's talk about a few different things.
Okay.
I think it was yesterday, the day before yesterday, Representative Anna Paulina Luna was on the Joe Rogan podcast, most likely doing damage control for the Epstein thing because they mentioned that they wanted to have Joe Rogan basically on damage control for them. But what she said was that because we've talked about in a past episode, I think it was actually the first episode, I talked about how she was being put forth in a task force to study like documents relating to things like aliens, UFOs, and other weird stuff. And she basically came out on Joe Rogan's podcast and said that these are interdimensional beings, is what she said, which is kind of wild. Like, what does that even mean? It makes me kind of think of that famous Art Bell.
You know, that old famous Art Bell.
Yeah, that old famous Art Bell. It makes me think of that famous Art Bell interview where he had on the Area 51 caller, and basically, you know, the apparently the network got shot out or something like that, something crazy.
Yeah,
it's kind of wild. They said in that interview or in that phone call, that they were forming bunkers and they had safe places to like put humanity, but they weren't going to do it.
Wow.
Yeah. So that sucks.
I've said this before, but I think it's going to be like Dawned on. I think it's going to be the aliens are coming here. There's also essentially interdimensional and non-explainable things here on Earth already, whether that's connected to ghosts and demons and everything else that we could just consider like magical. It's all just crazy shit we don't understand here, crazy shit we don't understand that's coming from the Earth in space. And those things are going to go to war.
So we've talked about it before, but do you think Bigfoot might be one of those interdimensional beings? Because I don't think it was her that mentioned it, but somebody else mentioned that he might.
I just I'm like the last person who wants to talk about Bigfoot ever.
I'm the last person. I know we haven't really talked much about. I mean, we have a little bit, but we haven't dived deep into. There's a few things we could.
I think I told you before that I think like it was seared into my brain that Bigfoot is a joke, and I know that like it's very interesting, but it's just so hard for me to like even want to learn about.
I get what you mean.
I just think it's so goofy already. And then it's goofy to think that he's hopping dimensions.
Well, let me ask you.
Even though, like, I'm thinking about other things that do that. It's just kind of silly to me to think that he would look like that. But maybe that's not silly at all. Maybe that's not silly at all.
I know you don't want to talk much about Bigfoot, but
we can. Well, I'm just saying the last person who usually wants to. Like, I have thoughts about Bigfoot. If you want to get into it.
Well, I do. I was thinking about something recently. Supposedly the Anunnaki didn't just genetically engineer the humans, they genetically engineered other beings too.
The Nephilim.
Yeah.
And then the Nephilim made us.
Yeah, but I was also reading that they might have made other creations too. And I was thinking, what if you know how people say that Bigfoot might be the missing link? What if Bigfoot was one of their like first experimentations to try and make like a human type thing, and they created that by accident?
Hell yeah. I like that.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was like thinking about it. But yeah, I don't know. I think Bigfoot could be like just one of those failed experiments, and that's probably why he's like so elusive too, because there's really not that many of them, just like a small group, and they've learned to you know, adapt with us because of the fact that they were created with us.
Yeah.
That could also be one of the underground species that like people talk about that have been with us for like ages.
Hell yeah.
And then the Nephilim could just be like the species that comes from like the water or that like has those underground bases in the water.
You know, that species that has the underground bases in the water.
Yeah, I mean, supposedly there's that construction facility.
You know how crazy you sound right now?
Yeah, I sound crazy.
Continue.
You know that for our listeners, there's supposedly a construction facility that makes UFOs or drones, AI drones that like go fly around the world and watch us. And then supposedly there's a base underwater. I was actually reading about it today where it was. I forgot where it exactly was, but it was off the coast of Mexico, like the Baja Peninsula, supposedly. But who knows? Maybe Bigfoot is some kind of missing link after all, but he's just a link to us and the gods, so to speak. So I found a post recently called The Ancient Alchemy, Resonance Transmutation of Almost Elements, the science behind the Philosopher's Stone. Silver is amazing. Silverware and silver dishes were silver for a reason. Silver ions kill bacteria, viruses, and fungi on contact at the cellular level. Silver is clean. Silver fibers and fabrics will keep the material smelling fresh for months. Some ionized silver water and milk, and it won't spoil for days. That is true. Silver is pretty amazing. I think that's probably I don't think we've talked about this before, but I wanted to kind of in around Halloween time, I wanted to kind of do like a classic monsters episode.
You've mentioned this.
Have I?
Yeah.
All right. I definitely wanted to talk about like werewolves and shit, but that's one thing that I've thought about is the fact that like with silver being like killing like germs and shit, that's probably why it's used to like kill all these like famous like vampires
That makes
and
sense.
werewolves and shit. You know? Yeah. Right. I think people have always known that it will help with things like that. There's apparently a well to hell. The legend holds that a team of Russian engineers, purportedly led by an individual named Mr. Azakov, in an unnamed place in Siberia, had drilled a hole that was 14.4 kilometers deep before breaking through to a cavity. Intrigued by this unexpected discovery, they lowered an extremely heat-tolerant microphone, along with other sensory equipment, into the well. The temperature deep within was 1,000 Celsius. The heat from a chamber of fire from which purportedly the tormented screams of the damned could be heard. What do you think of that? Do you think they actually like drilled down to hell?
I don't think it's real. I think that's I think some guy was just being artistic with the way he described it and then started a legend.
Yeah, that's like an old urban legend. Let's see. I think we should talk about Polybius.
Pop off about Polybius.
Oh, this is one of my favorite urban legends of all time. The reason why I like it a lot is because it combines some of my favorite things: video games, MKUltra, the Men in Black, all that kind of shit. This is my explanation of it. You know what it supposedly was. Apparently, it was a game on the West Coast that mysteriously showed up in like some arcades or like one arcade. It had like a thing where people were infatuated with playing it, where they were apparently addicted to playing it, even though it apparently was like this other game or exactly like this other game. It's probably fake. It's probably not a real game. And if it is, people have probably just faked it and just created their own versions of it. The legend goes that one day it might have been installed by like a KGB like ops. And the legend goes that one day some men in black came in and grabbed the game and like basically shipped it off, and nobody ever played it again.
Was it at one location or was it multiple locations?
I think it was multiple, but let's find out. Polybius is an urban legend about a lost arcade.
First, let's
Yep.
find out if it's Polybius or Polybius.
It's Polybius.
Are you sure?
Yeah, it's pronounced Polybius. It's a Greek guy.
Polybius. Well, who was Polybius?
He was a Greek historian of the Middle Hellenistic period. He's known for his histories, a universal history documenting the rise of Rome in the Mediterranean in the 3rd and 2nd centuries BC. Okay. His histories is important not only for being the only Hellenistic historical work to survive in any substantial form, but also for its analysis of constitutional change and the mixed constitution. Polybius's discussion of the separation of powers in government, of checks and balances to limit power, and his introduction of the people all influence the spirits of laws in John Locke's The Two Treaties of the Government and the framers of the United States Constitution. Interesting. So the Polybius is an urban legend about a lost arcade video game. According to the legend, a new game appeared in arcades around Portland, Oregon in 1981. The gameplay was supposedly psychoactive, abstract, and dangerous. Children who played the arcade game were said to suffer from amnesia, seizures, night terrors, and hallucinations. Despite these adverse effects, the arcade game was described as so addictive that players returned to Polybius repeatedly until they went insane, died, or vanished. The lack of any surviving Polybius cabinets is explained by men in black who were said to record data on the players before removing all of the cabinet machines. There is no evidence that Polybius ever existed. The earliest known print reference to the game is the September 2003 issue of GamePro. The earliest online reference to Polybius is the coinop.org entry dated to 1998. There is no evidence that supposed publisher Dinosglosson existed. There is no evidence that the game ever existed. The first online mention is 1998. It includes a purported screenshot of the title screen, allegedly from a ROM image file created from an original arcade machine. On May 16, 2009, an update to the page promised to bring further information about a trip to Kiev, Ukraine, to investigate. As of 2025, no further information has been added to the page. Wow. Researchers have found evidence that the entry was first uploaded a few years after 1998, indicating that even the upload date was fabricated. Archives of the entry from 2000 do not contain the 1998 date, but do contain the text. The last modification of this game, 2/6/2000, 10/23. Reason for modification, new edition. Anyone heard of this game? That's not that. I feel like that was just somebody asking, but whatever. The earliest known printed mention of Polybius is in the GamePro. All right, but let's get to the legend of it. According to the legend, a new video game appeared in the suburban arcades around Portland, Oregon in 1981. Released during the golden age of arcade video games, it was housed in a simple black cabinet. The game was abstract and geometric but highly addictive. People who claim to remember playing the game recall different and contradictory gameplay experiences. Players supposedly suffered from seizures, amnesia, insomnia, night terrors, and hallucinations. Addicted to the new game, children formed lines around the cabinet and fought each other for the access to the game. They continued to play increasingly unwell until after just a few weeks of the Polybius machines were taken away. Until after just a few weeks, all of the Polybius machines were taken away. It is claimed that the machines were visited by men in black who collected some form of unknown data but left the coins inside. It was said that the game could turn itself on autonomously. Polybius was suspected to be not a product but an experiment to test responses to the game's psychoactive stimuli. As the legend comes to an end, some of the players went insane, some took their own lives, and the arcade machines vanished without a trace. Yeah, a lot of people think it might have been the game Tempest. I don't know. See, if this was a real game, what I would say is that a lot of these CIA guys could have dissected it and learned what made it so addictive and just, push that into other games like Call of Duty or something, where they wanted to push something like a pro-America attitude on the masses or something like that.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? Maybe Call of Duty is just like the modern day Polybius, where people play it and are so addicted to it that they just want to keep playing it and playing it and playing it.
Yeah. Do you think back in these days they foresaw the billion-dollar industry coming, and that these are all weird experiments that just are fueled by capitalism? You know, like, let's see what's addicting about video games.
I think they saw that. I think they saw that pretty early on because they had tie-in games to movies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was basically like toys. Toys were kind of the same idea. Eventually they were taken over by pop culture and capitalism. And that's just kind of what happens with everything. So I think they thought it was only a matter of time before these fads called video games became really just, a real thing. I'm sure you can go back too and find a lot of people saying that, like in the 80s and 90s, or I should even say earlier in the 70s, being like, oh, video games are going to be next level one day. Just you wait and see.
Yeah, for real. Been saying that my whole life.
Well, yeah, exactly. And we're probably going to keep saying that until we're just literally living a video game. Like
Yep.
we're full on in simulation mode inside
Same
of a
with
game.
Aliens.
Well,
We're just gonna
exactly.
keep pining for it until it's just like part of our everyday life, and then we're like, oh yeah, remember we used to like wonder about this?
Yeah, and well, that's how I feel like it is already. Like I think about aliens so much, and like the prospect of how close we are to like understanding life in our universe, and how just even 20 years ago we didn't even like mention flying saucers without people thinking that you're crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How far we've come.
I still think flying saucers are like the least likely of all UFOs. Every modern UFO story I can think of is not a saucer.
Well, every modern one, but I think a lot of them were flying saucers at one point. I think there's even some that probably are still flying saucers. I think they come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. Supposedly the Tic Tac is like a government created one. I keep hearing that, and I think that would make a lot of sense, honestly. Are fairies, aliens / demons abducting people in the wilderness and parks in forests and in various countries around the world?
I hope so.
This is what somebody else wrote. Personally, I don't know what to make of the fairy belief. However, I do believe in interdimensional beings, and the folklore is rather interesting. If you're familiar with Missing 411, I'd say nothing is off the table. Most likely,
Yeah.
there are multiple agents or factors at play. See the
I'll tell you what
comment
it's
below.
not. It's not stairs in the woods. It's fairies.
I've seen stairs in the woods before, and that shit's weird. Like, actually, like, stumbled upon stairs in the woods.
Maybe there are stairs in the woods, damn.
No, there definitely are, but I don't think there's any kind of weird, malicious intent with it. I just think it's just something that people just, like, do when they're bored
you don't think
or
the
something.
stairs are a bridge?
Is that what people say?
Bridge to the other side?
I don't know. I've climbed the stairs before. Maybe I'm in the other side.
You're not supposed to climb the stairs, dude.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
You walked right into that
trap.
Right into that rat trap. You went right for that cheese.
Jeez, that sucks. Well, that was when I was like a kid, too. That was like when I would explore the woods as a kid, so I just kind of fell into it, I guess. I don't know. I've probably done a lot of things that have like sucked out like some spiritual energy or sapped some spirit from me because
you've probably ran into some dementors before.
Yeah, probably. I spent a lot of time in thrift shops. Probably have touched a few cursed items. You know.
Yeah.
There's things that happen. There's probably some energies that have latched onto me. I've probably drawn in some negative things or two.
Like, look at this taxidermy monkey hand.
Look at this taxidermy.
Let me give it a handshake.
Yeah. Man, I really wish I had a ride home. And then all of a sudden I get a ride home and the monkey hand just starts morphing.
From a drifter?
Yeah, from a drifter. A weird guy who's like telling me about how he was in like the Gulf War and how he just like, killed an entire like
You get a ride home from a guy with like Arizona plates. And you're like, what? So, I live around this way. I live on this street. And he's like, oh, he has no idea where that is. He's just driving.
He's like, all right, sounds good. I'm just like,
yeah. He says like that.
We're driving the opposite direction.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah. We start getting on the highway. We're heading down south. I'm just like, what's going on? He's just like, oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Then he goes, so when are you gonna shut the fuck up? So
All right. So fairies. These are the words of user Roger Dodge Her. His words. After reading many of these cases, both from the book and others not covered by David Polides, namely from other places with many disappearances like Norway and Ireland, I'm inclined to believe that a majority of these cases, probably 80% or so, involve the work of the Fae, F-A-E. Now, before you write this off, you have to realize that fairies are not what the mainstream media have shown us in childhood. Most of them are not tiny creatures composed of light floating around sparkling in pixie dust a la Tinkerbell. These beings are very much real with some human-like qualities. They can range anywhere from 4 inches to 7 feet tall. They are a very diverse group of creatures, much like humans. I will raise a couple of parallels from David Polides' cases and from a book I highly recommend. This subreddit reads. It's called The Fairy Faith in Celtic Countries by W.Y. Evans Wentz. Mind you, this book was published in 1910, way before any of Polides' work, over a full century ago. I believe this book holds a key to understanding what is going on. Quoted is text from the book. People tend to disappear near boulder fields. Fairy preserves, a heap of stones in a field should not be disturbed, though needed for building, especially if they are part of an ancient tumulus. The fairies are said to live inside the pile, and to move the stones would be most unfortunate. Where fairies live, when I asked Patsy where the fairies live, he turned her half around and pointing in the direction of Dun Angus, which was in full view of the sharp skyline of Arranmore, said that there in large tumulus on the hillside below it, they had one of their favorite abodes, but he added, the rocks are full of them and they are small fellows. People tend to disappear near berry bushes. A girl recovered from a fairy one day just before sunset in midsummer, and I, a boy then, my brother and cousin and myself were gathering bilberries, whortleberries, up by the rocks at the back of here, when all at once we heard music. We heard around the rocks, and there were within a few 100 feet of 6 or 8 of the gentlefolk, and they dancing. When they saw us, a little woman dressed all in red came running out from them towards us, and she struck my cousin across the face with what seemed to be green rush. We ran from home as hard as we could, and when my cousin reached the house, she fell dead. Father saddled a horse and went for Father Ryan. When Father Ryan arrived, he put a stole around his neck and began praying over my cousin and reading psalms and striking her with the stole, and that way brought her back. He said if she had not caught hold of my brother, she would have been taken forever. The fairy procession. We were told as children that as soon as night fell, the fairies from Rath Ringleton would form in a procession across Tara Road, pass road around certain bushes from which not have been disturbed for ages, and join the Gankenna or host of industrious folk, the red fairies. We were afraid, and our nurses always brought us home before the advent of the fairy procession. One of the passes used by the procession happened to be between 2 mud wall houses, and it is said that a man went out one of these houses at the wrong time, for when found he was dead. The fairies had taken him because he interfered with their procession. After the 31st of October, for after Halloween, the blackberries are not fit to eat, for the pixies have been over them. Abrupt weather changes after a person disappears. I was thinking that was kind of strange too, because I've always felt like kind of strange berry patches that are like very secluded spots, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a kind of a weird detail, but I was just thinking about that the other day because I went blueberry picking literally recently. Something to keep in mind, I guess. Abrupt weather changes after a person disappears. Where fairies live, in a spot near Oak Quarter, another place was pointed out where the fairies are often seen dancing. The name of it is Monsine on Damsha, the little bog of the dance. Other sorts of fairies live in the sea, and some of them who live in Arranmore, probably in conjunction with those in the sea, go out over the sea and cause storms and winds. Along the rants, and inhabitants tell about the fees who appear during the storms. These storm fairies are dressed in the colors of the rainbow and pass along following the most beautiful fae, who is mounted in a boat made from a nautilus of the southern seas. In Upper Brittany, as in Lower Brittany, the fays generally had their abodes in tumuli, in dolmens, in forests, in wastelands where there are great rocks or other menhirs, standing stones. And many other kinds of spirits live in the sea, and troubled sailors and fisher folk. Like all fairy folk of Celtic countries, those of Upper Brittany were given to stealing children. In the New World, we find the North American red men, a race as much given as the Celts are to belief in various spirits like fairies. They believe that there are spirits in lakes, rivers, and waterfalls, and rocks and trees, and in the earth and in the air, and that these beings produce storms, droughts, good and bad harvests, abundance and scarcity of game, disease, and the varying fortunes of men. The young, typically athletic men are taking. Mr. J.C. Lawson, who has very carefully investigated the folklore of modern Greece, says the Nereids are conceived as women half divine yet not immortal, always young, always beautiful, capricious at best, and at their worst cruel. Their presence is suspected everywhere. Like Celtic fairies, these Greek Nereids have their queens. They dance all night, disappearing at cockcrow. They can cast spells on animals or maladies on men and women. They can shift their shape. They take children in death and make changelings, and they fall in love with young men. Among the Romane peoples, the widespread belief in the Lele shows in other ways equally marked parallels with the fairy faith of the Celts. These lele wait at crossroads near dwellings or at village fountains or in fields and woods, where they can best cast on men and women various maladies. Sometimes they fall in love with beautiful young men and women, and have on such occasions even been controlled by their mortal lovers. This brings us directly to the way in which the Sidhi or the Tuatha de Danann of the olden times took the fine-looking young men and maidens. Perhaps one of the earliest and most famous literary accounts of such a taking is that concerning Eada, son of Eochaid, Lethderg, son of the king of Leinster, who is represented as contemporary with Patrick. While Aed was enjoying a game of hurley with his
Who's
boy
Patrick?
companions, maybe St. Patrick? While Aed was enjoying a game of hurley with his boy companions near Sid of Liamad Softsmock, two of the Sid women who loved the young prince very suddenly appeared and suddenly took him away with them into a fairy palace and kept him there 3 years. Whoa, okay. Smart, intellectually gifted people are taken. The gentry described in response to my wish, this description of the gentry was given. The folk are the grandest I have ever seen. They are far superior to us, and that is why they're called the gentry. They're not a working class, but a military aristocratic class, tall and noble appearing. They are a distinct race between our own and that of spirits. As they have told me, their qualifications are tremendous. We could cut off half the human race, but would not, they said, for we are expecting salvation. And I knew a man 3 or 4 years ago whom they struck down with paralysis. Their sight is so penetrating that I think they could see through the earth. They have a silvery voice, quick and sweet. The music they play is most beautiful. They take the whole body and soul of the young and intellectual people who are interesting, transmuting the body to a body like their own. I asked them once if they ever died, and they said no, we are always kept young. Once they take you and you taste food in their palace, you cannot come back. You are changed to one of them and live with them forever.
That sounds nice. It's like kind of like vampirism, but kind of nice.
Yeah, it's like a sweet vampirism.
Yeah, it's like a weird, quirky vampirism.
Weird, quirky vampirism.
Tell me I'm wrong.
People who come back are sometimes in a state of extreme confusion. Those who return from fairy, persons in a short trance state of 2 or 3 days duration, are said to be away with the fairies enjoying a festival. So they go off and they have raves with the fairies.
Cool.
Well, that makes sense. You know what I mean? The festival may be very material in nature, or it may be purely spiritual. Sometimes one may thus go to a fairy for an hour or two, or one may remain there for 7, 14, or 21 years. That's a jump. The mind of a person coming out of fairyland is usually as blank as to what has been seen and done there. Okay. Another idea is that the person knows well enough all about fairyland, but is prevented from communicating the knowledge. It almost sounds like doing psychedelics.
Yeah.
A certain woman of whom I knew said she had forgotten all about her experiences in fairy, but a friend of who heard her objected and said she did remember, wouldn't tell. A man may remain awake at night to watch one who has been to fairyland to see if that one holds communication with the fairies. Others say in such a case that the fairies know you are on the alert and will not be discovered. Well, I guess that's good. Now that we know that, like, you know, to look out for the fairies, we won't be, like, you know, fucked with.
So they don't mess with people looking for them.
I guess so. So that's good. Just always be looking for the fairies. If anybody hears this, if you just keep looking for the fairies, and you'll never be taken by them. Apparently, we just keep blowing up their spot. Basically, that's how you have to like look at it. Is just be like, oh, if there's any fairies here, I'm looking for you. Just constantly say that out in the middle of the woods. Just shout it if you can.
Yeah, really incite them.
Really incite them. I'm looking for you fairies. Any of you around here? I got a net.
You better keep on hiding.
You better keep on hiding. I'm looking for you. The biggest cluster of strange disappearances in the United States is located in Yosemite National Park. I've been told by a friend in California who is a student of psychical sciences that there exist in certain parts of that state, notably in the Yosemite Valley, as the red men seem to have known, according to their traditions. I also want to state that whenever he says red men, this is all quotes. Like
Those
all
are
of this
not your
has been-
choice of words.
Yeah, they're not my choice of words. These are all quotes from this book from 1910. Just so anybody, is
Some other piece of
questioning.
shit wrote that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I got you.
Some other piece of shit, implying I'm a piece of shit. I love it. According to their traditions, invisible race is exactly comparable to the gentry. These California races are said to exist now, as the Irish and Scotch invisible races are said to exist now by seers who can behold them, and like the latter races are described as a distinct order of beings who have never been in physical embodiments. If we follow the traditions of the Red Men, the Yosemite invisible tribes are probably but a few of many such tribes scattered throughout the North American continent. And equally with their Celtic relatives, they are described as a warlike race with the more than human powers over a physical nature, and as able to subject or destroy men. These Sidhi, who are the gentry of the Ben Bulben country and have kindred elsewhere in Ireland, Scotland, and probably in most other countries as well, such as the invisible races of the Yosemite Valley. And now we turn to examine this other side of their life, to behold the Sidhi as a warlike race, and also the invisible races of California are likewise described as given to war and mighty feats of arms. When a child's clothes are found, it tends to be bright and again near water or dry creek beds. In the neighborhood of Snowdon, the fairies were believed to live beneath the lakes from which they sometimes came forth, especially on misty days, and children used to be warned not to stray away from their homes in that sort of weather, lest they should be kidnapped by them. These fairies were not Christians, and they were great thieves. They were these fairies were not Christians and were great thieves. I love that line. That might be my favorite line of this whole thing. They were fond of bright colors. They were sharp of hearing, and no word had reached the wind would escape them. Sounds like these kids just went out to these like rivers and shit when they were really stormy and drowned, but I could be wrong. People disappear for days, even weeks on end, and reappear untouched by elements. Time in fairyland. I love saying these things. People would be 20 years in fairyland, and it wouldn't seem more than a night. A bridge groom who was taken on his wedding day was in fairyland for many generations, and coming back thought it was next morning. He asked where all the wedding guests were, and found one old woman who remembered the wedding. It sounds to me like he thought that he had a really kick-ass bachelor party.
Well,
The way a mortal might be taken by the Tulwith Teg was by being attracted into their dance. If they thus took you away, it would be according to our time for 12 months, though to you the time would seem no more than a night. In the invisible condition thus induced, people were able to join the pixie levels, during which, according to the old tradition, time slipped away very, very rapidly, though people returned from the pixies to older than when they went with them. People of European, more specifically German descent, tend to disappear. I guess they like going after the Germans. In Europe, the Greek peasant as firmly believes in nymphs or nereids as the Celtic peasant believes in fairies and nymphs. Nereids and fairies alike are often the survivals of an ancient mythology. Among the Romane peoples, the widespread belief in the Lele shows in other ways equally marked parallels with the fairy faith of the Celts. The Albanian peoples have evil fairies, no taller than children 12 years old, called in modern Greek, I can't pronounce that, Taiwekwa. It's in Greek letters. I don't know how to read Greek letters, but it means those without, who correspond to the Lele. Young people who have been enticed to enter their round dance afterwards waste away and die, apparently becoming one of those without. As of recently, people are being taken in cities near or surrounded by bodies of water. In some of these cases where the person is on the phone, a gushing of wind can be heard as if taken in the air by something. It could be aerial hosts or, as written above, narids, which live in the water. On people being taken aerially, in my experience, there was always a good deal of difference between the fairies and the hosts. The fairies were supposed to be living without material food, whereas the hosts were supposed to be living upon their own booty. Okay. Generally, the hosts were evil and the fairies good, though I have heard that the fairies used to take cattle to leave their old men rolled up the hides. One night, an old witch was heard to say to the fairies outside the fold, "We cannot get anything tonight." The old men who were left behind in the hides of the animals taken usually disappeared very suddenly. I saw two men who used to be lifted by the host. They would be carried from South Uist as far south as Barra Head and as far north as Harris. Sometimes when these men were ordered by the host to kill men on the road, they would kill instead either a horse or a cow. For in that way, so long as an animal was killed, the injunction of the host was fulfilled. So like a sacrifice? Fairies and fairy hosts, generally the fairies are to be seen after or about sunset and walk on the ground as we do, whereas the hosts travel in the air above places inhabited by people. The hosts used to go after the fall of night and more particularly about midnight. You'd hear them going in fine weather against the wind like a covey of birds, and they were in the habit of lifting men in the South Uist. A majority of these cases are young boys disappearing in some clusters. Only males have been taken, most notably at Crater Lake. The pygmy-sized Twyla Teg. I was born and bred where there was tradition that the Twyla Teg lived in holes in the hills and that none of these Twyla Teg was taller than 3 or 4 feet. It was a common idea that many of these Twyla Teg forming in a ring would dance and sing out on the mountainsides or on the plain, and that if children should meet with them at such a time, they would lose their way and never get out of the ring. If the Twyla Teg fancied any particular child, they would always keep that child, taking off its clothes and putting them on one of their own children, which was then left in its place. They took only boys, never girls.
Terrifying.
Yeah, that's some weird shit. What the fuck? General accounts of fairies taking people. So here's some general accounts. Encounters with the gentry. When I was a young man, I often used to go out in the mountains over there, pointing out over the window in their direction, to fish for trout or to hunt. And it was in January on a cold, dry day while carrying my gun that I and a friend with me, as we were walking around Ben Bulben, saw one of the gentry for the first time. I knew who it was, for I had heard the gentry described ever since I could remember. And this one was dressed in blue with a headdress adorned with what seemed to be frills. When he came up to us, he said to me in a sweet and silvery voice, "The seldomer you come to this mountain, the better. A young lady here wants to take you away." Then he told us not to fire off our guns because the gentry disliked being disturbed by the noise. And he seemed to be like a soldier of the gentry on guard. As we were leaving the mountains, he told us not to look back, and we didn't. Another time, I was alone trout fishing in nearly the same region when I heard the voice say, "It is," barefooted and fishing. Then there came a whistle like music and a noise like the beating of a drum, and soon one of the gentry came and talked with me for half an hour. He said, "Your mother will die in 11 months, and do not let her die unanointed." And she did die within 11 months. As he was going away, he warned me, "You must be in the house before sunset. Do not delay, do not delay. They can do nothing to you until I get back in the castle." As I found out afterwards, he was going to take me, but hesitated because he did not want to leave my mother alone. After these warnings, I was always afraid to go to the mountains, but lately I've been told I could if I took a friend with me. Nakma Fairies. Nakma, which you see over there, is said to contain excavated passages and a palace where the fairies live, and with them the people they have taken. And from inside of the hill there is believed to be an entrance to an underground world. It is a common opinion that after consumptives die, they are there with the fairies in good health. The wasted body is not taken into the hill, for it is usually regarded as not the body of the deceased, but rather as part of a changeling. The general belief being that the real body and the soul are carried off together, and those of an old person from fairyland substituted. The old person left soon declines and dies. Faeries, Sidhoga. According to our next witness, Stephen Ruin, a piper of Galway with whom I have often talked, there's one class of fairies who are nobody else than the spirits of men and women who once lived on Earth. And the banshee is a dead friend, relative, or ancestor who appears to give a warning. The fairies, he says, never care about old folks. They only take babies and young men and young women. If a young wife dies, she is said to have been taken by them and ever afterwards to live in fairyland. The same things are said to be a young man or a child who dies. Fairyland is a place of delights where music and singing and dancing and feasting are continually enjoyed, and its inhabitants are all about us, as numerous as the blades of grass. The good people and Mr. Gillerin. After the mother had testified, the daughter, who was quite of the younger generation, had her own opinion. She said that the good people live in the forts and often take men and women or youths who pass by the forts after sunset. The fairies won't take away infants and their mothers, and many precautions were taken to safeguard them till purification and baptism took place. When the fairy power became ineffective, placing iron about the bed, burning leather in the room, and giving mother and child the milk of a cow which had eaten of the moffin. Pearlwort, a plant of virtue, and similar means were taken to ensure their safety. The watching women neglected these precautions. The mother and child of both were spirited away to the fairy bower. Many stories are current on this subject. He said they thought of them as a race of spirits capable of making themselves visible to mortals, as living in the underground places, as taking fine, healthy babies and leaving changelings in their place. These changelings would waste away and die in a short time after being left. So firmly did the old people believe in fairies then that they would ridicule a person for not believing, and now quite the reverse state has come about. The taking of Mrs. K. The belief in fairies is quite a living thing here yet. For example, old Mrs. K, about a year ago, told me that on one occasion when our daughter had been at Castletown during the day, she went out to the road at nightfall to see if her daughter was yet in sight, whereupon a whole crowd of fairies suddenly surrounded her and began taking her off towards South Barrule Mountain, and she added, I couldn't get away from them until I had called my son. In closing, I'll leave you with this quote from the book. There seems to have always been, everywhere or nearly so, a belief in a race neither divine nor human, but very like to human beings who existed on a plane different from that of humans, though occupying the same space. This has been called the astral or the fourth dimensional plane. Why astrat? Why fourth dimensional? Why plane? Are questions the answers to which do not matter, and I do not attempt to defend the terms. But you must call it something. This is the belief to which Scott refers to in the introduction to the monastery, as the beautiful but almost forgotten theory of astral spirits or creatures of the elements surpassing human beings in knowledge and power.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a pretty good little fairy thing there, pun intended. Remember we were talking about the Finders cult?
Yeah.
So I have this post from somebody named Timothy Trismegistus,
Cool.
and he has it's his actual one from 6 years ago. It's called The Finders Cult, a glimpse into the sick reality of satanic cults protected by the government.
Hell yeah.
So it goes like this. In 1987, the New York Times ran a story about a little-known cult called the Finders. The first paragraph reads, police officials here said today that 6 disheveled children found in Tallahassee, Florida might be the offspring of members of a little-known cult, but the officials said they had not ruled out the possibility of kidnapping. Who are these suspicious men, and what were they doing with the 6 undocumented children transporting them across the country? 2 children who were with the Tallahassee men were found to show signs of abuse. The Finders had long been a topic of discussion for locals who were naturally fascinated with the cult that lived amongst them. The Washington City paper once described the Finders as such. In appearance, the Finders, most middle-aged men always in dark suits, wouldn't be out of place managing a local funeral home. But the behavior of the handful of adherents has people wondering whether they arrived by flying saucer. Townspeople say the Founders constantly walk the streets, following people home and taking extensive notes and pictures. They often appear at local council meetings, never saying a word but simply observing the scene. At other times, they plunder the visitors' center of brochures, maps, and local travel guides, and they haunt the courthouse, scouring land deeds to find out who owns the local real estate. From the Washington City paper. The Washington City paper goes on to address the shocking specter of the alleged Satanist practices of the cult with the startling revelation. But among all the cryptic inventory, cops found a photo album entitled The Execution of Henrietta and Igor, a series of snapshots depicting berobed adults and, slaughtering goats in a wintry woodscape. One photo depicted giggling. Okay, this is pretty crazy. I'm going to say all this, but I'm just going to edit it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But among all the cryptic inventory, cops found a photo album entitled The Execution of Henrietta and Igor, a series of snapshots depicting berobed adults slaughtering goats in a wintry woodscape. One photo depicted giggling toddlers pulling dead baby goats, ran the caption. Another showed a grinning adult presenting a goat's head to a startled child. One U.S. News and World Report article states, the more the police learned about the finders, the more bizarre they seemed. There were suggestions of abuse, Satanism, and dealing in ritualistic animal slaughter. None of the allegations was ever proved, however. The abuse charges against the two men in Tallahassee were also dropped. The children were apparently en route to Mexico to what the children described as a school for smart kids.
Ooh.
It was noted in a customs report that the children were unable to accurately identify themselves or their custodians, could not identify the purpose of telephones, toilets, or televisions, and were only given food as a reward. Yeah, that's fucked up. These shocking developments led to a raid on the finder's compound by the U.S. Customs Service. The report produced after the raid is astounding. During the execution of the warrant I was able to observe and access the entire building. I saw large quantities of children's toys and clothing, and the clothing consisted of diapers, clothes in the toddler to preschool range. No children were found on the premises. Cursory examination of the documents revealed detailed instructions for obtaining children for unspecified purposes. The instructions... Yeah, this is getting fucking crazy. The instructions included the impregnation of female members of the community known as the finders, purchasing children, trading, and... Jesus fucking Christ. One such telex specifically ordered the purchase of 2 children in Hong Kong to be arranged through a contact in the embassy there. What the fuck? This is getting fucking wild. This has been wild, but this is what?
I've been trying to get you to talk about this stuff for so long.
I know, but this is some heavy shit.
Yeah.
Another telex expressed interest in bank secrecy situations. Other documents identify an interest in high-tech transfers to the United Kingdom. Numerous properties under the control of finders, a keen interest. There was also a set of instructions which appeared to be broadcast via computer network, which advised participants to move and to keep them moving through different jurisdictions, and instructions on how to avoid detention. I was able to observe numerous documents which described explicit contact between members of the community known as the finders. I also saw a large collection of photographs of unidentified persons. Some of the photographs were nudes believed to be members of the finders. There were numerous photos of, and at least one of which was I'm not even going to say this one. One of the officers presented me with a photo album for review. The album contained a series of photos of adults and children dressed in white sheets participating in a blood ritual. The ritual centered around the execution of at least 2 goats. The photos portrayed the execution, disembowelment, and dismemberment of the goats at the hands of the... This included the removal of the testes of the male goat, the discovery of the female goat, and the presentation of the goat head to one of the children. I'm probably going to make this episode specifically with this part explicit. Because this is actually like...
You can get a warning on this one.
Yeah, this is some of the heaviest shit I think we've talked about thus far. And that's actually saying volumes, really. The warehouse contained a large library, two kitchens, a sauna, hot tub, and a video room. The video room seemed to be set up as an indoctrination center. It also appeared that the organization had the capability to produce its own videos. There were what appeared to be training areas for the children and what appeared to be an altar set up in a residential area of the warehouse. Many jars of feces and urine were located in this area. USCS report of investigation continuation filed by Special Agent Ramon J. Martinez, March 2nd, 1987. A follow-up report revealed the most shocking detail of the entire Finders case. Quote, I was advised that all of the passport data had been turned over to the State Department for their investigation. The State Department in turn advised MPD, DC Metropolitan Police, that all travel and use of passports by the holders of the passports was within the law and no action would be taken. This included travel to Moscow, North Korea, and North Vietnam from the late 50s to the early 70s. The individual further advised me of circumstances which indicated that the investigation into the Finders had become a CIA internal matter. The MPD report had been classified and is not available for review. I was advised that the FBI had withdrawn from the investigation several weeks prior and that the FBI Foreign Counterintelligence Division had directed the MPD not to advise the FBI Washington field office of anything that had transpired. After the Finders investigation became a CIA internal matter, no action against the Finders was ever taken and the case was largely faded from public memory. Not everyone was content with the investigation simply ending, and Florida Congressman Tom Lewis was quoted as saying, could our government have something to do with this Finders organization and turn their backs on these children? That's what all the evidence points to, says Lewis. And there's a lot of evidence. I can tell you this. We've got a lot of people scrambling, and that wouldn't be happening if there was nothing here. Digging by the media couldn't only produce one confirmed connection. A firm which operated as a front organization for the CIA, providing officers with computer training, employed several members of the Finders, the Washington Times reported. Other customs services documents and records from the FBI and Metro Police provide indications that the CIA had links to the Finders, or at least to some of the group's members. A Metro Police document dated February 19, 1987, quotes a CIA agent as confirming that his agency was sending its personnel to a Finders Corps, of future enterprises for training in computer operations. And a later Customs Service report says the CIA admitted to owning the Finders organization as a front for a domestic computer training operation, but that it had gone bad. Wow. The CIA, of course, has denied any connection to the Finders. So what does all this information mean to you? How could they get away with it? And why was this case closed? And how deep does this rabbit hole go? Sources. Sorry for the lazy formatting. I'm on mobile. New York Times, Chicago Tribune, Washington City, Elbid, News World Report, and yeah, that's it. Washington Times. That was pretty crazy, honestly.
Yeah, the shit about them having having the kids involved in the really scary stuff like that definitely happens. There's evidence of that happening, and often it's just treated as like one-offs. Like, oh, it's so sad that happened to you guys, and your parents were weird and sadistic. It's like, no, their parents always have friends who do this stuff, and those are also people who get away with it and live normal lives.
Oh yeah, there's groups of them.
Secretly fucked up lives, and that shit goes all the way to the top. There's people who think it's yeah, I'm gonna murder somebody with my 4-year-old, and that's gonna unlock the beast mode inside of them.
That's gonna unlock the beast mode inside of. I mean, yeah, that's crazy. Like, genuinely, it's fascinating and also fucking insane that people think that way and will do that. It is terrifying, 100%.
But then you get in the satanic part of it, and you get the deeply connected part of it. You get the Fire Nation.
You get the Fire Nation. Yeah, the Satanists. Let's see. That was pretty crazy.
There's more, dude. There's more just like it you could find.
Oh yeah, that type of shit happens all over the United States, all over the world. There's like a lot of shit that happens, like places that we've been, places that we've gone to.
Yup.
There's things that happen right underneath our noses every day that, you know, that we're around. I'm not even saying us, but just everybody in general.
Yeah.
And you don't even realize that, like, behind closed doors in that restaurant that you're eating at, maybe it's run by some secret satanic family, or maybe it's a gambling den instead.
Yep.
You never know. Yep. Project Artichoke. I don't know if we've gone over Project Artichoke yet, or if we have much. I know we've talked about it a little bit. Project Artichoke was a project developed and enacted by the CIA for the purposes of researching methods of interrogation. Initially known as Project Bluebird, Artichoke officially arose on August 20th, 1951, and is operated by the CIA's Office of Scientific Intelligence. The primary goal of Project Artichoke was to determine whether a person could be involuntarily made to perform an act of attempted murder. The project also studied the effects of mind control and hypnosis, forced addiction to and subsequent withdrawal from morphine and other chemicals, including LSD, to produce amnesia and other vulnerable states in victims. Project Artichoke was a mind control program that gathered information together with the intelligence divisions of the Army, Navy, Air Force, and FBI. In addition, the scope of the project was outlined in a memo dated January 1952 that asked, "Can we get control of an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will and even against fundamental laws of nature such as self-preservation?" Project Artichoke was the CIA's secret code name for carrying out in-house and overseas experiments using LSD, hypnosis, and total isolation as forms of psychological harassment for special interrogations on human subjects. At first, agents used cocaine, marijuana,
Hey.
heroin, peyote, and mescaline.
Heroin. Hey.
Hey! But they increasingly saw LSD as the most promising drug. Hey! The subjects who left this project were fogged with amnesia. I'm feeling pretty fogged with amnesia right now, resulting in faulty and vague memories of the experience. I'm feeling pretty faulty and vague right now, actually. In 1952, unknowing CIA agents were secretly drugged to determine the drug's effects on unsuspecting people. One record states that an agent was kept on LSD for 77 days. Now, all right. Now you hear that and you think, oh, that's crazy. But at that point, their serotonin would be so full of LSD that they would have developed such a tolerance to it that they would really, like, after like a week or two, they would just be like, all right, cool. So I'm getting tapped out, right? Like, that's what would happen. Their serotonin would pretty much like refuse, like they would develop a tolerance to it. Artichoke they would also probably fuck up their serotonin that way too. So that person was probably fucked up for life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Artichoke reserved the potential of dengue fever and other diseases. A classified artichoke memo read, "Not all viruses have to be lethal. The objective includes those that act as short-term and long-term incapacitating agents." The CIA disputed which department would take over the operation. Finally, it was decided that an agent from the CIA research staff, they just gave it to some intern. Former U.S. Army Brigadier General, oh, that's not an intern, Paul F. Gaynor would oversee it. The CIA sought to establish control over what it perceived as the weaker and less intelligent segments of society. Oh, he's calling out those guys. Or for potential agents, defectors, refugees, prisoners of war, and others. Just know, anybody who listens to this, he's not calling you guys out. A CIA report states that if hypnosis succeeded, could be created to, you know who.
You know who.
The overseas operations took place in locations through Europe, Japan, Southeast Asia, and the Philippines. Teams were assembled to manage these operations, and they were told to conduct at the overseas bases operational experiments utilizing aliens as subjects. That was in quotes, just so everyone knows. Ooh, I found a page called CIA Activities in the United States. This sounds fun.
Let's hear about it.
1950. Starting in 1950, the CIA researched and experimented with the use of possible mind control drugs and other chemical, biological, and radiological stimuli on both willing and uninformed subjects. The purpose of these programs was to investigate whether and how it was possible to modify an individual's behavior by covert means. And, I've said this before and I'll say it again. MKUltra is probably one of my favorite conspiracies of all time, and probably got me into conspiracies in general so profusely as I am. It's probably MKUltra and aliens are the two things.
Deservedly.
Deservedly, I agree. They kind of work in two different ways, because like one is kind of like not that it's outside the realm of possibility, but it's like it's a thing that kind of shatters reality a little bit. And then the other one is one that shatters the illusion of control. But anyways, Crusade for Freedom. 1950 was the beginning of the Crusade for Freedom, a 10-year campaign to generate domestic support for Radio Free Europe and to conceal the CIA as the primary source for Radio Free Europe's funding. What was Radio Free Europe? A media organization broadcasting news and analysis in 27 languages to 23 countries across Eastern Europe and Central Asia and the Caucasus and Middle East, headquartered in Prague since 1995. But it was probably headquartered somewhere else at that time. Project MKUltra was a CIA program which involved, among other projects, research on the use of drugs and behavior modification. One of the most controversial cases arising from the program was the death of Dr. Frank Olson, a scientist who worked in the Special Operations Division of the U.S. Army Biological Center in Camp Detrick, Maryland. According to the Church Committee, as part of the MKUltra experiments, Olson was given a dose of LSD without his knowledge and eventually suffered a severe psychiatric response. The CIA sent him to New York to see one of their psychiatrists, who recommended that Olson be placed in a mental institution for the rest into a mental institution for recovery. While spending the evening in a hotel room with another CIA employee, Olson threw himself out of his hotel room window, plunging to his death. Olson's family members.
This is what Wormwood's about, right?
What's Wormwood?
Documentary series on Netflix.
I haven't seen that yet, but it's potentially. I know the story of this guy is pretty fascinating and interesting. So what basically happened was you know what? One of these days we got to read excerpts. I'm gonna reread this book. I've read it there's this book that I've read. It's probably the most I've read of any nonfiction book thus far. It's called Acid Dreams by Martin A. Lee, and it's all about the CIA basically accidentally creating the hippies, or maybe purposely creating the hippies because of MKUltra. The whole book pretty much goes into deep detail about their connections to say Timothy Leary, and then I think they were connected to the Grateful Dead's personal chemist. Forgot what his name was. It was Oswald or something like that, or something funky, something cool. It's kind of crazy. They accidentally created an entire generation basically, and they spread it all throughout the United States, and that eventually just reverbed into the world. And they weren't expecting that all these people that were being dosed with these things that they were trying to mind control, these lower echelons of society that they were trying to dose, these drug addicts and poor people and all these people that are just down on their luck. They didn't realize what was going to happen is it was going to, stir up emotions and create a movement in people's minds and souls, I guess. I should probably watch that Wormwood show, honestly. That would be pretty good. But Frank Olson, what happened to him is at this time, the CIA kept dosing people in the CIA and all around their different organizations and secret places. So anybody who was involved in Project MKUltra, from what I understand, if they were involved at different levels, a lot of them were actually dosed in secret by the CIA. They would dose each other in Langley. A lot of the CIA guys would do that specifically in order to see if there were any moles or rats in the organization. But they would also do it so that if any of these spies overseas were ever caught up and were also dosed with like, say, some kind of like truth serum or like nerve agent, they'd be able to like handle it under pressure because they've already been through all of this.
Yeah.
What they did was, I guess they dosed Frank Olson. He ended up during his LSD trip. One thing you gotta, because it mentioned it was a biological center in Camp Dietrich. This guy was actually like a biologist. He actually had a degree in biology and specifically was into biological warfare. So this guy, when he ended up like getting dosed with the LSD, he saw a whole bunch of like different like images of biological warfare, and like it depressed him because he spent his life trying to like further all these different things. And he ended up telling his family that all this happened. And I think he told his therapist or something like that. And this ended up being like a big scandal with the CIA. And the way it goes is it wasn't a scandal at this point, but he ended up jumping out of the window, supposedly. Some people say that he was pushed because he wanted to like, talk and say some shit, or maybe even because he told his therapist. But he ended up getting like, falling out of the window and to his death. And so it became a huge scandal for like the CIA that like they accidentally dosed him, and that he was accidentally dosed and ended up killing himself because of it. Yeah, that's that's actually one of the stories that brought MKUltra to the light, was because of that.
Yeah.